Election day has come and gone, but the 2018 midterms are not over yet. 17 major races across the country remain uncalled, 12 in the House, 2 in the Senate, and 3 races for governor. But much of the focus is on Florida, where recounts are underway in the state's races for Senate and governor. Republican Rick Scott, Florida's outgoing governor, is claiming victory in the Senate race and accusing his opponent, incumbent Democratic Senator Bill Nelson, of trying to commit fraud to win the election. Senator Nelson pushed back against Scott on Capitol Hill Tuesday afternoon.
Sadly, it's become clear that my opponent isn't interested in making sure that every lawful vote is counted. Instead, he's been using his power as governor to try to undermine the voting process. He's thrown around words like voter fraud with no proof. He's tried to get the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to intimidate local supervisors of election. Both the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, which Governor Scott oversees, and the Governor Scott appointed Florida Secretary of State have both said that there is no credible evidence of voter fraud.
Joining me now with more on these outstanding races is CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. All right, Ed, one of those local election supervisors Senator Nelson mentioned is Broward County's Brenda Snipes. Governor Scott is suing Snipes along with her equivalent in Palm Beach County. What are those suits about?
And there are several, actually. Essentially, they are designed to make sure that law enforcement can get as close to and then protect the ballots as they get counted. But also they're designed to sort of slap those 2 county officials on the wrist and say, you didn't follow the rules, or actually state law, as written in telling us exactly how many votes you had, how you were tabulating them, and were you reporting them in time. This is a chronic problem in Florida, in those 2 states especially. It's nothing new to people who pay attention to local races in Florida, but of course now it's getting national attention. But as Senator Nelson said, it bears repeating. There are no credible accusations of voter fraud that are being investigated by state law enforcement at this time. And while the Nelson and Scott camps seem to find each other in court just about every day, none of those lawsuits have really made any big difference so far. The bottom line is that a recount, which is underway, needs to be completed by 3 o'clock on Thursday.
Yeah, because Broward County began its recount today. They have to finish those 3 recounts by 3 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday. I mean, the question is, Ed, can they get it all done in time?
Well, and that's a question for every county in Florida, frankly. It's not just Broward County, but Broward County officials told local reporters today that they intend to do it. They haven't missed any other deadline. There's some dispute about that, I think, among certainly Republicans who've been watching this race. But they say they'll get it done, and so we'll see. And as you've seen in the footage, we're seeing it right there. This is a pretty transparent process, at least compared to other states. You can see them as they tabulate the ballots, and that is a facility that is open to the press and from which we are allowed to observe the whole process. And we'll see whether they hit that deadline on Thursday.
Well, the Georgia's governor race has also yet to be called. Democrat Stacey Abrams is just over 20,000 votes away from forcing a runoff with Republican Brian Kemp. How confident is her campaign that that can happen?
They are confident because they say that they estimate that there are about 28,700 ballots still outstanding, provisional ballots, overseas military ballots, others that haven't been counted yet. They say that she needs to gain about 20,595 votes to trigger a runoff, meaning that would help her get higher and drag Brian Kemp's number below 50% to force a state-mandated runoff. But in order to actually trigger a recount, just to drag this out even longer, even if he does ultimately win, she only needs about 18,259 ballots. So they have done the math, and they believe that everything is within striking distance, and so they're being very patient, saying, let these counts continue, make sure every vote gets counted. We have no reason to concede the race.
Wow, right down to the last digit there, 18,259.
Yeah.
So in Maine, Ed, let's talk about that state. Republican Congressman Bruce Poliquin is suing to block the state from using ranked choice voting to tabulate the votes in this race. Explain for us how ranked choice voting works and
Sure.
why this congressman is suing.
Well, look at the margins there. I mean, as you can see, quite tight. Poliquin, the Republican incumbent, has a slight advantage here. State law in Maine requires that somebody get at least 50% of the vote, and if they don't, what's called ranked choice voting kicks in, and that essentially means that a voter goes to the ballot booth and says, my first choice is Bruce Poliquin. My second choice is the Democrat. My third choice is the independent. My fourth choice is the other independent on the ballot. So because Poliquin at this point has not topped 50%, what they've now done is gone to check who was the second choice of people who voted for the two independent candidates in this race. They got a combined 8%. And it's believed that the Democrat, Jared Golden, forgive me, so many candidates, so little time.
Yes.
That if you don't, that he might ultimately win this race because he was the second choice of enough voters who voted for those two independents. Poliquin suing now, saying that this is unconstitutional. That is consistent with Republican concerns in the state that this is something that shouldn't be done. But twice Maine voters have voted to implement ranked choice voting. Republicans say it's unconstitutional, but supporters of this system turn around and say, well, the state constitution actually doesn't say anything about how federal elections should be implemented. Therefore, if we want to use ranked choice voting, we should be allowed to.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, finally, in our last 30 seconds here, Ed, there are at least 6 House races in California that haven't been called. Any sense as to when these may get sorted out?
I think by the end of the week we'll know about most of them. The one that I think is most telling is the California 39th Congressional District, where Republican Young Kim, who would become the first Korean-American woman elected to Congress and is the Republican candidate, faces Democrat Gil Cisneros. If Cisneros finds a way to pull ahead of her, that would be a real tough loss for Republicans who see Young Kim as a potential rising star and, frankly, one of the only ones left for Republicans in California, where there are about as many Republicans, well, there just aren't very many Republicans, let's put it that way. So they're hoping to hold on, but Democrats believe they're going to be able to pick up at least a few of those seats.
All right, Ed O'Keefe in Washington for us. Ed, thank you.